I've been giving a bit more thought to that persistent oil leak from the primary side of that Tiger Cub that I've been working on. In spite of my fitting a new drive side main bearing seal the right way round and fitting the correct seal and seal retainer behind the clutch, both of which were absent, completely missing before, after a ride on the bike and running it stationary, there is still oil leakage there. Not as bad as it was, but it was a disappointment to see that there was any at all, really, having really sort of been confident that that would stop it. But thinking back, I remember putting the seal in and thinking, well, it wasn't really a tight fit on the main shaft, and it was also slightly sort of loose in here, but obviously the retainer would have clamped it in place. But I did think at the time that it was a bit funny that it was such a loose fit on the main shaft, that seal. And if we look at the main shaft, if we post it through here, we can see even after the taper it's quite a rattling fit. And what I don't remember when I did the job was any of the bronze bush in the main shaft sleeve gear or top gear poking through. Now here is the main shaft, or a main shaft top gear or sleeve gear, and we can see the bronze bush there, and also, as it's a used one, see that little groove there worn into it? Well, that would have been worn into it by a rubber seal in there. Now this would just come through far enough to run in the rubber seal. Now we definitely didn't have any evidence of that coming through into this part of the casing on the engine in the Tiger Cub. So if there had been, the seal would have worked, gripped this, and would have kept the oil in. And what I think's happened is, for some reason, either this portion of the bush may have worn away, broken off, perhaps the bush hasn't been driven in far enough into the gear, who knows. But the only way to deal with that would be to get this gear out of the engine. And the irony and the awkwardness of that is, to get this gear out, you've got to split the engine, because on these engines you've got no access to get at the gearbox sprocket. On the earlier engines, this whole side of the crankcase came away and you could leave the engine in the frame and you could leave the head and barrel on. But on these later centre split engines, you've got to take this whole crankcase off to get at the gearbox sprocket, which you'd have to do to undo the nut on this gear and then get it out the gearbox. You can get all the rest of the gearbox out, that's not a problem, but you would need to get this gear out in order to deal with whatever's going on with that bronze bush, whether it's missing, worn, broken, whatever. So I can take some comfort in that I tried to do what I could with it. I fitted the new seal in good faith, but obviously it wasn't going to work because this wasn't in there for it to grip against and work with. So if the owner ever wants that leak sorting out for good, it's probably going to be a matter of either a full engine strip, or we try and find a seal which will press into there tightly, a slim, very slim seal, which would be of a smaller diameter, internal diameter or ID than the original, which would actually grip the main shaft. Now that is an option that I'd be prepared to consider, because that way you wouldn't have to strip the whole engine down to do it, and that would be worth a try. But for now, I sort of got a 50% win on that. I got a reduction in the leakage but not a stoppage, and there's not really anything that can be done about that unless we can find a seal, if the owner should want to, that might be a press-in fit that would also be a snug fit on this. But certainly that bit of the bronze bush in the sleeve gear is missing on his engine, and that's why we got the oil leak. So that explains that, at least.